Alright, in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can solo ECTHAR. This is kind of a revival of my boss build series from a year and a half ago, pre Into the Light Onslaught. I was doing a lot of these videos. And we're at a point right now in the season where things are kind of slow, and I just wanted to, it's a good time to go back in and just mess around, do the things you like to do in the game without feeling like you have to sit there farming things or ticking off a checklist. Just play the game, have some fun. That's what I was doing. And I wanted to revisit Ghosts of the Deep, see how it performs with Prismatic, because I haven't really been in there since Prismatic. And back in the day, ECTHAR was kind of a challenge, I guess you could say, to 4-phase. If you can solo 4-phase ECTHAR, you're pretty much using meta weapons. You've ironed out your damage rotation, your survivability. That would be a successful solo, right? Even a 5-phase was pretty standard. I think back in the day people were using, and I tried this loadout, like it was Riptide, Lament, and something else. But I mean, if you're using Riptide and Lament, that was kind of a classic solo dungeon loadout back then, and you could essentially solo 4-phase ECTHAR. Maybe it was 5-phase. The closest I ever came to 3-phase was on my Warlock using Briar's Contempt, was surrounded. I think that was the solo 3-phase, but that's like between that and Legend of Acrius back then, those were the only ways to really, with loadout swaps, mind you, to achieve a solo 3-phase, right? So just speaking as kind of an average to above average gamer that likes to solo dungeons, this gives you a little bit of flexibility to kind of have a bit of variety in your loadout with what you want to use and still be able to perform well. And the damage that you're going to see here in this gameplay, if you want, by the way, just skip ahead to the timestamps to the gameplay if you don't want to hear me go over the build and the loadout and the weapons. This was a 3.5-phase, so it was a 4-phase, but I could have 3-phased, I'm pretty sure, because reviewing the footage, I wasn't super optimal on my damage on every single damage phase, but it was still pretty good. It was pretty fair, and my survivability was on point. To the note of survivability, ECTHAR is still a very challenging boss to stay alive solo. You absolutely need to be running meta damage resist builds, right? I think you want double arc and solar. I mean, you could go arc, solar, and void for your resists, but the way I'm getting around surviving here is Spirit of Surturachne. So as long as I can pop Transcendence and spam my grenades during damage phase, I'm going to have constant Woven Mail uptime, right? I can get a little bit of a boost from the seasonal artifact as well by throwing Tangles. Which one is it? Is it Vile Weave? Tangles will like sever enemies, but they'll also create a what is it? Into the Fray, the one from the aspect from Titan, from Berserker Titan. They have an aspect where you destroy a Tangle, it creates an orb of energy where if you enter the radius of that orb, then you will get Woven Mail, right? So you have that in the seasonal artifact, so you're getting even more Woven Mail because of this, whichever one it is here, right? And it's like 10 seconds, right? So normally, if you're going to play into Woven Mail on any class on Prismatic, you're stuck with just a mere 5 seconds, right? It's kind of like how Radiance is just very cheap on Prismatic, and by cheap I mean not great. Like, you can proc it fairly easily with multiple melees and ability spam, but you only get it for 5 seconds. Same thing with Woven Mail. The way to get around that, the only way on Prismatic to get more than 5 seconds of Woven Mail, is to use Spirit of Surturachne. That'll give you 10 seconds on grenade throw, right? You don't even have to hit anything with the grenade. So you get double the amount of Woven Mail with this build compared to any other class, and then because of the seasonal artifact, I think you also get 10 seconds from the Tangles. So pretty good, pretty useful. On top of that, I'm getting Void Overshields from picking up Orbs of Power because of Facet of Purpose, right? Which is pretty good, and I did some testing previous to this build. I was using something completely different. I was using like Silence and Squall, so I had 5 stacks of Frost Armor plus plus woven mail. So I mean, I was very high on the damage resist. Overshield is basically just as good. If you can combine either frost armor or woven mail with void overshield, then I'd say you're pretty good on your overall tankiness. And mind you, if you're using like golden gun, yeah, you can benefit from restoration as well, but I think restoration is a little bit less useful when it comes to needing damage resist specifically, because restoration is not gonna make it hit less hard when you get hit by the enemy, right? If you have damage resist, you get hit less hard. On top of that, I can sever the enemies, right? So that's an additional 40% DR, right? So I sever the boss, I get 40% damage reduction to the boss, plus I've got woven mail, plus I've got void overshields, plus I've got amplified for the 15% for ascension. So I mean, just the amplified, the woven mail, and the void overshield, you know, you're looking at a ton of DR and HP, right? Sever the boss, and then that's basically how you can survive Soloing ECTHAR. Because if not, you're pretty much counting on like a well or banner of war, or just being transcendent the entire time, which you're not going to be, right? So you want to make sure that your build can cover all those bases. All right, so then we got to figure out how to damage the boss. Also neutral game, right? So quickly, the neutral game, velocity baton, I mean, it's shitting out orbs for me, which is going to give me constant overshield. It's going to give me grenade energy, so I can keep my woven mail uptime from Certarachne with the innervation there, right? Recuperation for a little bit of health. But velocity baton alone is basically going to cover all of your ad clear. You don't need to use your super, you don't need to use transcendence. Just save all that for your damage phase versus ECTHAR. Just run around spamming velocity baton and using your abilities, right? Just make sure you're using your ascension, your threaded spike, throwing your tangles, throwing your grenade, right? As long as you can do all that, then velocity baton will be plenty, right? Especially because with volatile marksman and some of these void based seasonal artifact mods, you're basically going to have volatile rounds on this thing all the time, which is also going to give you a ×4 void weapon boost while you're ad clearing, which is pretty nice. Demo, gonna feed you more grenades. Double special, not an issue at all. I'd say if you're gonna do any kind of solo dungeon stuff, you should absolutely be running double special, because there's way more than enough enemies for you to kill by yourself, right? You don't have your teammates picking off some of your kills, which means that you're going to get more ammo in return. Plus, because you're using Spirit of Foetracer and you don't need surges and you don't need time dilation and all that kind of stuff, you can run special finisher, right? So you just finish enemies, you basically have infinite special ammo. And if you wanted to, you can even use like Dreadful Finisher and gold from lead from the seasonal artifact, but you definitely don't need to. There was never a single time where I was out of ammo running double special. Arbalist, like, you don't have to use it pre-damage. I mean, you can if you want to kind of snipe some of the Lucent wizards, but I mean, you don't need to, surprisingly. Like, you can just go up to the Lucent Hive, and as long as you're jumping up and down in the air, which you should be doing if you're using Ascension, then you could just spray down on them with Velocity Baton, and even though they're flying targets, they're still going to die, because you're going to be jolting them, you're going to be using your Threaded Spike, your grenade. It's going to be plenty, right? Plus you're getting Bolt Charge too from the seasonal artifact every now and then, so as you're using your abilities, you're discharging Bolt Charge, which is pretty good. So your neutral game is covered there as far as ad clear. Now for damaging the boss, okay, this was going to be the main thing for me to test, and I spent most of this weekend just kind of messing around and testing different damage options. First, I thought I want to use Summon Bonum, because the idea of using like a rocket launcher or grenade launcher is obviously self-destruction. You can blow yourself up, you can die easily that way, right? So it's a bit of a risky play, but you can diminish that risk by having a extremely high damage resistance build like this, right? I can even be right up in ECTHAR's face and still survive like collateral from damaging myself from my grenade launcher, right? I usually tolerate like 1 hit before I back away, whereas otherwise you'd just be dead straight up. That in combination with all the damage that you're taking from the boss and the ads, you're dead, right? But you can get away with it on this build. And if you can get away with it on this build, that's where Surrounded comes in, right? But originally I was thinking Summon Bonum, because when you ascend, you get arc weapon boost ×4 anyways, and then the attrition orbs would allow me to maintain my DR from Faceted Purpose, Void Overshields, Recuperation, during damage, right? So if you're not going to use something like Lament that heals you as you do damage, you want to use the sword with attrition orbs. That's if you're going the sword route. I also tried Lament, and that was looking like a 5-phase, right? So kind of like back in the day, you had to push it to a 4-phase. Lament has since been nerfed. Not heavily nerfed, but it's definitely not as viable as it used to be, right? The survivability on it is good, though. I would say it's even better than Summon Bonum. I tried Salvation's Grip, too slow for me, right? So then I figured, well, I got to use the meta grenade launcher vs chill inhibitor, right? Which is perfect with Foetracer, because then you can use Silence and Squall, you can use Dusk Fields. Your Hailfire Spike is going to proc stasis weapon boost ×4, and as it evolves into solar damage, it will proc solar damage ×4 as well. Just FYI, I tested that. I didn't think it used to do that, but it does now. So I thought, well, chill inhibitors got to be the way to go. The problem is the damage phase is about, 45 seconds or so, and in that time you've got to kill the knight, get the buff, break ECTHAR's shield, and then if you're going to be playing into Envious Arsenal, you have to swap weapons, right? And so if you're going to do this, if you're going to be swapping between your 3 weapons without a loadout swap, you're stuck using Arbalist, VS Velocity Baton, and Chill Inhibitor. Now the problem is not a big deal to switch to Arbalist, right? You should have plenty of ammo to do your damage rotations without having to reload. The thing is, you have to reload Velocity Baton as soon as you switch to it, so that takes time, right? Obviously, if you do it properly, if you're Transcendent, for example, you can time it so that when you switch to Velocity Baton, you throw a grenade so that you don't have to reload it, right? Or you shoot it and then throw a grenade. It doesn't matter. But the problem is with Envious Arsenal, to get it reloaded, you got to swap between those 3 weapons and do damage with them, right? So you're losing time, you're losing damage by having to switch weapons to do damage with lesser damage weapons, and then having to wait on reloads on top of that, right? Just to shoot 8 shots. I never once was able to empty all of my reserves with VS Chill Inhibitor with Envious Arsenal because of the waste of time, right? So better for longer damage phases, less so for this damage phase versus ECTHAR. So then I remembered, well, what about Caraxes? And this presented a couple issues. I said, okay, well, if I'm going to use Caraxes, it means I got to switch off, my previous build here, which was basically using mostly stasis abilities, right? Silence and Squall, Duskfield. I have to figure out a way to efficiently keep uptime on Strand Weapon Boost, right? So Unraveling Rounds, right? So thanks to people commenting on my last video there, discovered that Unraveling Rounds does proc Strand Weapon Boost. So as long as I'm picking up orbs from the seasonal artifact, I can have Unraveling Rounds on this thing to self-proc Strand Weapon Boost. And I've got my Threaded Spike, of course, right? But it's not a damage over time, so you got to make sure that you throw it when your Strand Weapon Boost is expired, because if it hasn't, then you will lose the buff, right? It doesn't restart the timer. It only gives you the Foetracer buff if you don't currently have it, right? Whereas Unraveling Rounds, because it's damage over time and it has more uptime, it'll proc regularly, right? So I got 2 options to keep Strand Weapon Boost going. I'm pretty sure that I had it up all the time. But yeah, it worked out. As soon as I switched off of Chill Inhibitor to Caraxes, I did massively more damage. Like, this was looking like a very tight 4-phase, if not a 5-phase. Switching to Caraxes, it was like, oh, this might even be a 3-phase, right? And part of that is Envious Assassin. Okay, for ECTHAR, far superior perk than Envious Arsenal, because you, like I said, the waste of time that you have to spend switching weapons, you don't have to do that with Caraxes, as long as you're just the only time waste is throwing your abilities, right? Throwing your threaded spike, keeping your radiant uptime, keeping your strand weapon boost uptime. That's all you got to focus on, and then you just spam the crap out of Caraxes. Caraxes, you can stack 21 shots in the mag, right? So if you have, like my build here for Caraxes with backup mag, you hold 7 in the mag, you can overflow it to 14 on the first Envious Assassin proc. So right, you just go around, if you're using a special weapon, it happens faster, you kill like 5 enemies, you're going to overflow the mag to 14. You pull it out, you check it, if it says 14, you stow it again, and then you go around, you kill at least 5, 6, 7 more enemies, right? Just kill a whole bunch. When you pull it out again, it's going to have 21, which is almost its entire reserves. So it's pretty crazy. It means that you can essentially dump all of your reserves in a single damage phase, whereas with Chill Inhibitor, you maybe get through 2/3 of your reserves, right? So that's the major difference in damage. Right, so again, just quickly here over the abilities, Shadow Shot, Deadfall. We're going to use Gambler's Dodge so we can have more threaded spikes when we ascend. Now we proc Gamblers, right? It's going to create tangles for more woven mail. I went with Magnetic Grenade here just so that when my tether does expire during damage, and likely my Transcendence as well, I can throw a Magnetic Grenade to proc 15% Weaken, right? So I'll always have Weaken, I'll always have Radiant. Right? If you're going to use Prismatic, you want to against a boss, and you want to limit the amount of damage phases, then you want to stack as many damage buffs as possible. So Radiant, Weaken, and then ×4 Surge from Foetracer, right? Faceted Protection for extra DR, Faceted Dawn, like I just said, Radiant, Weaken, Purpose for Void Overshields, and Facet of Hope for more Ascension spam, right? I could basically spam Ascension like every 20 seconds, even with 50 mobility, which is pretty crazy. I think if you have 100 mobility, you can, with Facet of Hope, you can get your Ascension back within 15 seconds, right? And the timer for Amplified is 15 seconds, right? So it means that you could basically have constant uptime on Amplified, almost even at tier 5 mobility, right? Let's say if you're tier 7 mobility, you can have back-to-back Ascension and constant Amplified. As far as the combat mods go, pretty straightforward here. Strand Siphon doesn't really matter except for during damage phase. Yeah, potentially, with the tether and everything, you can get some more orbs, but really it's just a filler. Even Void Siphon is a bit of a filler because, I've got Attrition Orbs on Velocity Baton. I like reload speed, I like dexterity. I went over the damage resist there. Stock up my heavy ammo faster with Strand Scavenger. Innervation is key with recuperation, especially if you're using Velocity Baton. You're going to have back-to-back grenades. Even with Magnetic Grenades, you're going to have so many, it's going to be crazy, right? Even with the slower cooldown grenades. Demo is going to give you grenade energy from Velocity Baton, but then you pick up the orbs at the same time, which give you even more grenade energy, right? It's more grenades, more woven mail, right? And then because Powerful Attraction doesn't work with Ascension according to my testing, I went with Proximity Ward, so when I do finishers to get my special ammo, I'll have a Void Overshield, and Distribution. That way every time I do ascend, I get a little bit of ability energy to all my weapons. But yeah, that's basically it for the build. Hope you enjoy the gameplay. See you in the next one. Starting off with the first damage phase here, I've got my all my abilities ready to go. Get a pool on the ground, reload it with a grenade, threaded spike, Gambler's Dodge. I'm amplified. I've got woven mail. I've got an overshield. Arbalest the boss's shield off. Throw my threaded spikes as often as I can. I've got tether on the ground. I can go to town on Caraxes. I completely forgot to pull out Caraxes pre-damage phase and overflow the mag to 21. So off to a bad start, having to reload this thing more than necessary. If I would have thrown one less grenade, I probably would have been able to dump all my reserves regardless. Did I just pick up some extra ammo here? I'm not even too sure, but look at the bolt charge going off. It wasn't even surrounded for more than half the time, and that's the amount of damage that I did there. So pretty good. And you'll notice that I did most of my damage from the fountain there in the middle where that green flame is, or at least I was attempting to. You can do it at the back of the room, close to where you rally. you can have your back up against the wall and still survive ECTHAR with Woven Mail and Amplified and all that. The problem is you're not going to be surrounded, right? So you need to go out into the middle of the arena, close to that green flame. It'll increase the likelihood of being surrounded. I didn't do that optimally, and that's why I was only surrounded for like half of the damage phase. I think it might be a bit better on the next damage phase. I think the next damage phase was my best one, so I'll do the commentary over that damage phase as well, but just demonstrating the neutral gameplay loop of this build, right? We didn't have to swap loadouts at all, right? There's no Nighthawk swap into anything else. It's just using the same build all throughout. Like there's just bolt charge going off, throwing your tangle gives you Woven Mail. Velocity Baton, essentially, this is the demo attrition orbs roll, but if you ever wanted to experience the repulsor brace with destabilizing roll, which I have one as well, it's pretty fun, but you can get that from the seasonal artifact with like Maligned Harvest and Volatile Marksman, right? You just add clear with Velocity Baton, you're just automatically going to get volatile rounds, right? Which is proccing Void Weapon boost ×4 as well anytime I hit yellow bars or orange bars with volatile, right? So I don't even have to necessarily use my Void Grenade to get the Void Weapon boost, right? I would have liked... I didn't get as much use out of the Void Weakening Grenade as I thought I would. I thought I was going to have at least one extra weaken application during damage phase, post-tether, post-transcendence. The problem is sometimes I was like transcendent for the entire damage phase, and so therefore my Hailfire Spike was overriding my magnetic grenade. But I mean, it's fine nonetheless. The lower cooldown on the magnetic grenade is a bit of a downside compared to something like Grapple or Duskfields, right? And if I wanted to be true to the essence of upkeeping Strand weapon boost ×4, then I could have just ran with Grapple Grenade instead of the Void Weakening Grenade, and then I could have freed up a fragment slot in my abilities, right? I could have taken off Facet of Dominance or whatever it is, right? Which leads me to the point, post Heresy, post this seasonal artifact, if you wanted to play this build similarly, right, without like volatile and unraveling that are free from the artifact, you just run Facet of Bravery, right? So that would be the play. Just use your Grapple Grenade with the threaded spike, so you have 2 strand abilities to use with your strand weapons, like I'm doing here, right? Swap out Facet of Dominance, switch it for Bravery, then you've got Volatile rounds and Unraveling rounds. So I used to be of the I've made the argument that Stasis and Void are the absolute best abilities to use with Spirit of Foetracer because of their damage over time. They do damage over time like Duskfields, there's tick damage, Silence and Squall, right? So it can just consistently reproc the Foetracer ×4 buff regularly, like without you having to be mindful of the timer, of the 15-second timer, and looping your abilities properly, right? It's just you could just play into this gameplay mindlessly because of Stasis and Void, essentially is what I'm saying. But now that I know, thanks to Derek in the comments from the last video, cheers Derek, yeah, because we can unravel enemies and get strand weapon boosts as well, that kind of increases the viability of Strand for Spirit of Foetracer, right? So using Void and Strand or Void and Stasis it's a good way to, you can go either way, but I wouldn't recommend mixing Stasis and Strand. I would just pick one or the other depending on what weapons you want to use here, right? So I think I used Arbalest a little more than I wanted to there. Normally the Knight would just be dead from looping my abilities. I get a little bit closer to center here. Look, I'm still not surrounded. How is that possible? Finally surrounded. Okay, and I think I had my magazine overflowed here. I'm a little bit too close. You got to make sure that you're jumping up and down as often as possible, because if you just sit on the ground, like your grenade can hit a moth in front of you or one of the boss's projectiles, an enemy projectile. It explodes too close to you, you're dead, right? So I was too close for comfort there, but got through it nonetheless. But yeah, if I had to do this again, if I wanted to try and optimize for the 3 phase, then I think I would just have to do 2 things. One is make sure I'm surrounded for the entire damage phase, right? or at least 90% of it, because I'd say my uptime on Surrounded was like 50%, right? Which cumulatively, that, you know, that's like the equivalent of like having like a 25% damage buff for the entire damage phase on average, as opposed to 47, nearly 50% that I could have had for the entire damage phase, right? That's far superior than bait and switch, which is another, you know, that's another reason why Caraxus can shine over the classic bait and switch role on Chill Inhibitor or Wicked Sister, right? Well, I mean, if you're comparing rapid fires exclusively, then you're just comparing Caraxus to Chill Inhibitor, right? But you can get surrounded on either, right? So it's kind of a moot point on that. It's just, you just need to make sure you're surrounded. So that's the first thing that I would try and optimize, is positioning myself to be surrounded. The second thing I'd try to optimize is throw 1 or 2 less grenades. I only need to throw grenades every 10 seconds to upkeep my woven mail, right? I was throwing them like back to back. It's like, oh, if I see I have it available, I'm going to throw it. It's kind of a bad habit because it's a time lost, you know, for the animation, the time it takes you to throw your grenade, to uselessly reproc woven mail, or inefficiently, I should say. Whereas I could have dumped like 3 or 4 more Caraxus shots, right? Instead, I'm finishing the damage phase. I've got like, sometimes I've got like 6 grenades left in my reserves. That's a mistake, right? You should throw 1 or 2 less grenades, shoot more Caraxus, right? And then obviously be more mindful pre-damage phase of making sure that Envious is procced, right? So I can see right now I've got 11 on Caraxus, so I need to make sure that as soon as I have at least 14, make sure that I check the overflow, right? And then once I pull it out, it's at 14, stow it again, kill a bunch of stuff, and then check it, I'll be at 21. So just check pre-damage phase that you're at 21 from Envious Assassin, and that's going to help massively, because I think there was at least one damage phase where I got off all my reserves, and I think I even picked up more heavy during damage phase and still got some off. I'm not too sure, but yeah, the point is, with Chill Inhibitor, it's just not, it's with Envious Arsenal anyways, it's not practical to get off all your reserves, right? And there's no reconstruction or Envious Assassin on Chill Inhibitor, so that's where Caraxus kind of takes its place, right? But anyways, I'm going to skip through the rest of this gameplay footage here. I'll just go straight to the last 2 damage phases. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.